myself again. But it's the only...
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith, and it is retro night. So joined with the usual crowd, we've got George, Mitch, Stu, Steve, and this week we've got special guest Ian Mearns to look back on games between Newcastle United and Blackburn Rovers. Plenty memories. We'll look back at the games. We'll look back at some of the incidents that Stu in particular has got up to on his trips to Blackburn. He's always got a story. We'll be looking at players who played for both clubs, of course, and also looking at celebrity fans and looking for your memories as well. So chip in with your memories and your recollections of either trips to Ewood Park or games against Blackburn at St James's Park. So, George, as always, we will start with you and your first memories of Newcastle against Blackburn.
First memories are about, I've got a fondness for Blackburn because when I was a young man, there was two players playing for England, Ronnie Clayton and Bill Eckersley. There was a little fullback, were just out of this world at that time, and they became favourites of mine. So I've always had a soft spot for Blackburn. In terms of the games I remember, the first one I remember, or is important to me, wasn't very long ago, 2012, when we beat them, I think it was 3-1. And Demba Ba scored a hat-trick. And I think that was the day I thought, well, we've got ourselves a centre-forward here. So that was a very important one to me as well. So that's a start for me. But there are others. I also think that quite a lot of the games that we play with Blackburn tend to be good games for all sorts of reasons. Even the last one we had with the cup tie wasn't a bad game, just that we were on the wrong end of danger of being on the wrong end of a thumping, that's all. Still was a good game, if you know what I mean, in terms of the fact that there was some football and there was some challenge and so on. So but the 3-1 with Demba Ba scoring a hat-trick was a highlight for me. Okay,
good stuff. Ian, as you're a guest tonight, we'll come to you next. Your memories of Newcastle against Blackburn, games that you've seen or particular memories?
Well, there's two. Obviously, I think the away defeat at 2-1 in the season when we were 12 points ahead, and I think that away defeat at Blackburn was when the nail was put in the coffin of our championship challenge on that particular season. Was it Fenton that got both the goals for them?
He is there. There he is there. Just went away celebrating. Graham Fenton got a double. And
in terms of a trip, I do know some people in Blackburn. I used to know a bloke called Bill Taylor, who actually was the leader of the council in Blackburn, and he was Jack Straw's agent. And we met Bill and Jack Straw in the pub, the Ivy, by the hospital before the game. And my abiding memory of that, and it's a bit of a funny, sad story, but you know, I'll tell it anyway. There was a little old lady called Ethel, who was like the pot lady in the pub, and me and about 10 or 15 mates were in there. We met Jack Straw and Bill Taylor, and all my mates, when they got a drink, and they got Ethel a drink as well, and she was drinking port, lemon, and hot water. Right. Anyway, she had that many of them lined up. Right. She was like 4'5", and she was a pot lady. She had that many lined up. She couldn't finish them, so she came back in after the match and was drinking port, lemon, and hot water. Our little lads had got her. Must have got her about 30 drinks. Anyway, I gathered from Bill Taylor that poor little old Ethel didn't make it through the night.
Yeah, that Graham Fenton one. Getting back to that game, Ian, you know, it was devastating, wasn't it? I mean, we just saw things falling apart. I mean, a lot of people point to the 4-3 Liverpool game, but that game in particular was just, you know, we thought we had it. David Batty scored, I think, in that game, and you know, to put us one up. But Fenton came on as a substitute, and
it was Newcastle, 85th, 89th minute or something, wasn't it? It was like right at the end of the game when he got the 2 goals. And I seem to remember Darren Peacock, you know, you could just see his head had went down. Actually, after the first goal, I think Darren Peacock's head had went down. If I might be misremembering that, but I just thought we saw, oh no, you know. And I think that was a game that I was watching on a beam back from St James's Park. up in the Milburn stand. I would normally go, but there was something on and I couldn't get away that morning, and so I watched it from on a beam back from St James's, And I used to like new away trips to Blackburn. It was a canny place to go, really.
Steve, can I tag another straw bit on for Ian's now he's mentioned them?
Go on.
When I was a member of the Criminal Justice Liaison Committee at government level, I used to have a monthly meeting with the Home Secretary. Now, when Jack Straw became Home Secretary, the civil servants used to put their head in their hands for the first half hour, because the first half hour of the meeting was bloody football and nothing else.
To be fair, like as I said, I went into the Ivy with Bill Taylor and him, and he mixed in with all the lads. To be fair to him, and me and him didn't say eye to eye on politics normally. So, but there we go.
Good stuff. Steve Hasty, welcome, mate. Good to see you. Your memories of trips to Blackburn or games against Blackburn at St James's?
Always good trips. I enjoyed them because my pal lived in Altrincham, and we used to go down. We used to go to a lot of the games in Lancashire, and around that neck of the woods. And it was really a sort of a great time, especially during that sort of promotion season and the seasons beforehand. And as I say, we used to go down to Craig's, and Blackburn was always one of the trips that we did. And it was, I used to enjoy the trip, even though sometimes I was driving. I used to enjoy those trips because Blackburn was just sort of, a relatively from where we drank anyway. It was a relatively quiet little town. It wasn't one of those raucous places where you knew you were going to get chased all over the place wherever you went. It was always quite welcoming. And I remember one particular game. I think it was the cup match. I think Blackburn beat us 1-0. I think that Roy Wegley scored, if I remember rightly. If you remember him, he had the jinx on us for a couple of seasons. I remember being there, and I remember a right commotion on the terraces when we suddenly realised where we were standing. There was this crowd of lads, and a bus arrived from Walker. And I remember there was quite a few of the lads who were actually part of the juniors at the time for Newcastle had to come down on this bus from Walker, including Roachy and I think Clarkey as well, if I remember rightly, walking along the terraces. They hadn't been involved in the squad, but they'd come down anyway with a bunch of lads from Walker. So little things like that you remember when you're at the game. But in terms of performances and disappointments, I've got to agree that particular two goals by Fenton really stick in my throat, even to this day, to be quite honest.
Yeah, definitely.
Neil
Mitchell?
For me, games against Blackburn always seem to be synonymous with a cup. Nearly always seem to pull them out in a cup room somewhere, and there's certainly the two that's really are ingrained on my mind. Was the game when Mark Huckager suddenly morphed into Roberto Carlos and stuck screamer into the bottom corner. And what stands out for that, I went down to that game with my good mate Tim. It was being in the ground afterwards for about an hour. All the fans standing on the seats, chanting, making a racket. It was crazy because with the cup games you get a bigger allocation as well, of course. So that night always does spring me in. I think it was actually bloody Richard Keys in the studio talking about they're still here and they're still here, and they were still going on about it for ages after the game. And then the other Blackburn trip, because you're right, Blackburn trips are always really good trips. Was another cup game in the late 90s, I think, when Saha scored the winner. But that trip was made interesting for us by one of our mates getting carted off after an incident with a police horse.
He didn't punch it, did he?
No, quite the opposite. If you give us, I'll tell you. Now,
tell
lad, he's a really good lad. At the time, he lived in Aberdeen. He travelled down from Aberdeen on the train to meet us in a minibus outside the Strawberry to go down. We were staying with a pal who lives in Grange over Sands. So I had a pick up there and then on to Blackburn. And you know when you've got a group of lads together and you all go to away games, there's one who's always, he's a liability, basically. means no harm to anybody, but he always, the person he's a liability to is himself. This is the lad who fell asleep on the back of a water taxi in Bruges, and nobody could find him because he was just going round and round the canal system. He's the same lad who fell asleep on a bench in Frankfurt with no shirt on and got half a tan. So was wandering around Frankfurt looking like he was wearing a Feyenoord strip. And he always used to bring a bag of really strange beers, and occasionally he'd bring a whiskey with tasting notes. And you knew we were onto an interesting day when we were barely over the Red Hoof Bridge, and he's reading out the tasting notes for the whiskey, telling everybody to look out for the undertone of cherry tunes and the late peaty finish in the whiskey. And we're like, hang on a minute, we're not in Gateshead yet, man. And then he started producing these bottles, and I forget what the beer was called. It was called Bush, and it was one of these Belgian weird wheat beers it was something like 11.5%. So by the time we got to Blackburn, he was somewhere near Mars and Venus. And it was like, just keep an eye on him. Somebody keep an eye on him. So when you get to Blackburn, the Fernhurst pub used to put like bottle bars and food out in the car park and get away fans in there. And there was always a good atmosphere. And there was sort of outside loos. Well, he decided not to use the outside loo. He went around the back onto the fence and decided to relieve himself from the back. What he didn't know on the other side of the fence was a mounted police officer. And so the mounted police officer comes around the corner quite upset at getting an early April shower. And she had the most gorgeous eyes. She was beautiful. But that's an aside.
The horse.
She was quite irate. And she was quite irate. Well, this lad, in his wisdom, decided to try and make it up to the mounted police officer by kissing the horse on the nose.
Oh.
Which apparently, and we only found this out, is technically assaulting the police officer. So, unfortunately for this lad, he'd spent money on a train to come and meet us outside the Strawberry in a minibus, spent money on a match ticket, money on all these beers and things like that, got to Blackburn, didn't see the game, and then we had to leave without him, go back to Grange Over Sands, and then he had to spend 50 odd quid on a taxi from Blackburn to Grange Over Sands to come and catch up when they eventually let him out when he'd sobered up. So it wasn't punching a horse, but it was kissing a horse that got him into bother.
Well, the good news is the horse has just been in touch and it's ready for more.
Your tongues, though. Your tongues.
Brilliant story, Mitch. That's why we started doing this show. I knew there'd be some classics, and I'm sure you've been looking at Stu's notes, because that's one of Stu's stories. I'm sure, is it?
Well, he's got another Blackburn one. Never mind, I'm not going to get involved.
Go on, it's good to have you on again, Stu.
Let Stu go, and Neil can come back to the other Blackburn one, or I will.
Okay.
Oh shit!
Blackburn was quite sensible.
Yes.
Now, before I start, I want to just mention a couple of things. First of all, happy birthday to Mitch for yesterday.
Thank you.
And a very big congratulations to George and Mrs. M on their 54th wedding anniversary today.
Thanks, Stu.
Thanks, Stu.
Yep. Happy birthday, Mitch. There's plenty of people saying it as well. Stu, Derek, Dixon.
the one that Ian mentioned first was the defence. When we were there, there was all the game. So that was it. You don't want to and it was but the biggest that probably the with it's all it's through it. You remember when you mentioned the middle with the and it was yeah, and didn't you know it was just didn't bother them.
Started in that, if everyone remembers, it was and we raised eyebrows. You spent James Quinn score this is actually but when era, of course, he came to St James league and back became, yeah, that was the rings bells. The other one I'll tell you, and it was towards the end of summer, he was deciding what Newcastle would do for the game with them Bentley scored. Up and down and scored. Was it depends on how
thing is, not good. A lot of money at it. That was a son as a put them. And I actually them all giddy. I think stopping at Warwick University because of the city I forgot.
It was and normally, as you probably must, your vehicle, story about me. Well, I can't tell them about me because student goes, oh, and I do this black kid, said they wouldn't let me drive and was struggling to get seats together. And if I remember right, he was sitting on seat. The driver said to me, you know what it is? I was on the sort of yesterday. Together. Fantastic enough at the time. I think it was big man. He used to play for Newcastle at me. And he goes, yeah, but actually, oh, yeah. Takes a all of this and just opened the door, and he had this big there, Well, they are not. And how they commented, I don't know. But
if everyone puts on mute, and then that should rectify it. And I'll just 2 minutes. I haven't checked the comments tonight because obviously we're going until a little bit later on.
right.
Hopefully we'll be able to see whether people can hear now. But yeah, apparently the sound's been an absolute nightmare for people. I'm not sure. Sometimes it happens with more than one connection.
Right.
Hopefully somebody here will see what happens. Go on, you continue.
Yeah, we eventually got, and I think we won actually. Neil, it was a but the point I'm making is that everybody's in telling that person's story. Neil, it's usually that person's story about me, not about Neil at all. So it was a win and it was a good night with lads. And coming back, of course, you have the problem that some of the lads want to go back to the road to go to the pub again for a lock-in or to a nightclub, and some people didn't want to do that. So those that want to come back to Newcastle, which included us, we back to Newcastle, got back at about 3 o'clock in the morning. The others, nobody know what time they got back, but it was still a good trip, and it was to Blackburn.
Okay, yeah, good stuff. People are saying we sound like Daleks, guys. What I'm going to do is I'm going to end the broadcast and I'm going to start again. It might just be something with the system. So I'll send you a new code and we'll come back on in about 5 minutes time.